Oh, we're
Hello, and
recording.
welcome to the Rush countdown of the worst albums and the best albums, starting in reverse order. We got the Prog Robs here. We're going to start with Barry Robbins, the senior member of the clan, and he's going to use some words of
The
wisdom here
old man.
about his least favorite Rush albums and his process.
Yeah, so you asked us to like pick out the worst four first, and just when I started thinking about I realized it was pretty hard because I was trying to figure out what criteria I was going to use, and I was going to start off and say, well, let me rank like the singing, the drum playing, the bass playing, the guitar playing, and give each album like a score in each of those criteria, and then add up the scores, and maybe that would help me, rank them. Then I thought, the way I really rank albums in my head is by how many great songs they have, right? And that's what I ended up doing. Like I looked at all the albums and I thought about for each album, what are like the really awesome songs that each album has, and then I used that to kind of do my criteria. And initially, like I thought, well, I mean, the first Rush album, that's got to be the worst because it doesn't even have Peart. But actually, I ended up changing my mind and listing Roll the Bones as the worst Rush album, just because I just there aren't really any great songs on it. So that was kind of my worst Rush album pick. I mean, I kind of like Roll the Bones, but other than that, there just isn't really. I kind of like Ghost of a Chance, but there's no really great song on that list. So that was my number 19.
Yeah, I love this album. It's not one of my top Rush albums, but I do think there's a lot to be said for it. I'll get to my comments later on that.
Okay.
Sean, you have anything to add on Roll the Bones?
Hey, I love Roll the Bones too. I have it much higher than Barry has it. Um, but that's what's fun about this. Everybody has a different kind of take on the discography. So it would be kind of boring if we all had the
Yeah.
same albums ranked, low,
Right.
and the same albums ranked in the middle. It's really fun to go through and find out, why everybody ranks everything the way they do.
So if Barry, if you're finished on that, I'll go to Sean's number 19, which actually happens to be my number 19 as well, and that's the self-titled initial album by Rush called Rush, which Barry you mentioned has no Neil Peart. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah.
All right, so I like the raw and spontaneous feel of this album. We all know the album has the two great bookend songs. I mean, Finding My Way is a great rocker there, that great
Yeah.
opening riff. I love Alex Lifeson's guitar solo in Here Again, maybe reminiscent of Jimmy Page's bluesy stuff from those early Zeppelin albums. I love Geddy Lee's howling vocal approach on this that he establishes. What You're Doing has a great groovy riff, which is very enjoyable. Before and After has a nice melody, which sets up a more powerful, more forceful second half of the song. The album as a whole seems to be more influenced by Zeppelin, Blue Cheer, and the Yardbirds, as
Yeah.
opposed to the early progressive rock stuff like Yes and Genesis,
Right.
whose influence would turn up later on in subsequent albums. So if you're purely a prog rock guy, this album's not for you. This is really in the way of Yardbirds, Zeppelin, stuff like that, Blue Cheer. We don't yet hear one thing that's kind of a drawback on this. I think is we don't yet hear Geddy Lee's technical proficiency that you hear on the later albums, but it's still a very good effort. I would probably give it like a B minus. Having said that, I don't consider this a Rush album because it's not. I think you got to have Neil for it to be a
Yeah.
Yeah,
full-fledged Rush
and this is my number 19 as well. This is my last Rush album, and you guys hit the nail on the head there. There's no Neil Peart. There's really no Rush. I mean, Rush didn't continue on
album.
once Neil passed. The band was done. John Rutsey is fine. I give him due credit. He's proficient. But one of the things that makes Rush is Neil Peart's drumming. And not only that, Geddy was never crazy about writing lyrics. I believe he wrote all the lyrics on this album.
Yeah.
It's not an album that Geddy is particularly proud of, I don't think. I recently read his autobiography, and this was recorded very quickly. It was on a low budget. Sounds a lot like Led Zeppelin, and like you mentioned, Sean, I guess you said maybe the Yardbirds as well. So
Yeah.
a lot with Jimmy Page. It's a lot of raw vocals on Geddy Lee's part. He hadn't developed into a singer yet. That comes much later in his career. I do like Finding My Way. I think that's a decent track. I think there's some good raunchy guitars, which Alex eventually goes back to later on in their catalog. But really, the takeaway from this one is there's no Neil Peart, so there's really no Rush album for me. So it's really kind of a throwaway album, and not something I listen to that frequently.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add there. The only reason why I would say it wasn't my bottom pick was because Working Man is such a great rocking song. So the lyrics, forget about them. You know, nobody in the band, Geddy Lee can't write lyrics like Neil Peart. So, but Working Man is such a great song. Finding My Way. These are like such rocking songs, and Working Man is such a monster song in concert.
Yeah, it is.
In the end, can I see that list again?
Yeah, in the end is off of
That's
Fly
on.
By
Yeah,
Night.
yeah.
I can open up.
Yeah.
You want?
They used to actually end their concerts with "In the Mood." That was one they did a lot in concert.
And Signet, yeah, Signet's X1, yeah.
Yeah, but I pretty much agree with you guys on this one.
Yeah. So next up on your list, Barry, is number 18, Caress of Steel. So,
all right, yeah. So I just, I love Bastille Day, and I know there's like some big songs, but there just isn't really a lot that I like on this album. There aren't a lot. I don't think the band. This wasn't a successful album for the band, and there just isn't really much that I like on the album outside of Bastille Day.
Yeah, I got it pretty low on my list too. I don't know about you, Sean, but they actually, like I said, I was reading Geddy Lee's autobiography earlier this year, and one of the things he said about this album was it was recorded in about a week, so it was very low budget, but they were smoking hash oil the entire time. So when they were mixing the album and they were listening to it, it sounded totally different to them than it sounded when they played it for their friends who weren't high. And Geddy Lee said when he played it for Paul, they were touring with Kiss, he played it for Paul Stanley before the album was released, and Paul Stanley just had this really weird look on his face, like, what the hell is this? Because some of these songs, like The Fountain of Lemneth and the Necromancer has some good parts to it, but The Fountain of Lemneth, I think, is a bit of a...
They all have like good little sections. It's just when you add it all up, there's just not a lot on it.
Yeah, just not a great Rush album, but I think they learned their lesson to not go into the studio and just be high the whole time. So, but it does have some good drum parts from Neil Peart. I think the opening fill on Lakeside Park is classic. Again, this is really early. It's still a developmental album. I do like Geddy's vocals on Bastille Day. I like the lyrics by Neil Peart on that one. I think I'm Going Bald is a little bit
the thing that I think
that's something that really fits into their catalog.
The thing that I think is so disappointing about this album is I don't think there's any way. Tell me a person that thinks this is better than Fly By Night.
Right.
So then it's like they made one album and then the next album got worse, and that doesn't normally happen with Rush. They have followed.
They took a step back. They definitely took a step back with this album. Yeah, they took a step back with this album.
Yeah.
So
I actually do have. I was when I saw Barry's bottom four, I was tempted to move this down a little bit, but I do have that a little bit higher than. It's going to be probably in my next four, but
okay.
So I'm not as down on it as you guys are, but I see you're making strong points after all.
Sean, your number 18 we have here is Hold Your Fire. So this is what the synth era of Rush. So you take it away.
All right, so Hold Your Fire. I listened to this pretty frequently. This is towards the end of the period that the musical direction of the band had become dominated by Geddy Lee. apparently, you guys read the book, right? The Geddy Lee.
No.
Yeah, I read
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Yeah. So um, definitely a different kind of musical direction here, and this was the end of that. Um, in terms of the songs, I love Open Secrets. That's got a great bass line by Geddy Lee.
Great guitar
In terms of
solo. Yeah. Love that one.
he has some good guitar work. In terms of Neil's lyrics, that song, Open Secret, probably resonates with anyone who's ever like struggled in a relationship. It's got some really deep lyrics there. If you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Second Nature has a cool vibe and some great lyrical content. I don't know if he was talking about the Cold War issues back then, because this is right, a couple years before the Berlin Wall fell. I like, where he throws these lyrics out there. Too many captains keep on steering us wrong. Mission is a beautiful melodic piece and has some of the band's most memorable lyrical content, especially that phrase where Getty goes, when I feel the powerful visions the fire has made alive, I wish I had that instinct. I wish I had that drive. That's just such a great lyrical lyrical melody there. So memorable. One of my favorite Neil Peart lyrics in the whole discography. So this one, I love the lyrical content. The reason I have it lower is because it's just in terms of the production and it was really more of a reflection of where everybody's production values were at the time. If you go back and you listen to music from 1986, 87, it's just not my cup of tea. So that's why I have it so low. And by the way, what is Ty Sean doing on this album? I mean, you're going to record a Rush song about a giant fucking panda? I mean, we're talking about animals now? Ty Sean's got to go, all right?
See, like all the things that you mentioned are like, I mean, those are the songs that I have that make the album good. Open Secrets, Lock and Key, and Mission. That's a great song.
Yeah.
Those are reasons why I had that a little bit higher.
I had it a little bit higher too. It's like Sean said, if you put it in the context of the 1980s, maybe it sounds a little better, but it does sound dated. The keyboards and kind of the big arena rock kind of drums, they're not as organic as some of Neil's other recordings. And Alex guitars is a little bit thin in spots. It got a little bit crunchier later in his career, in his later recordings. So it's a little bit thin, but I had that higher up. I'm actually going to go to, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go to my, let's go to my number 17 album. And that's, I don't know how you guys are going to react to this, but it's Snakes and Arrows. It's the 2007 release. I have this number 17. We're skipping around a little bit. So Barry's got that. Barry, you're gonna have to talk to get on camera there. So go ahead.
Well, I can't imagine having Snakes and Arrows that low. I
do. Here's the thing. It's one of the things that Sean and I talked a little bit about when we did the Dream Theater rankings, and it doesn't have a ton of really great songs that stand out to me. I'll just, because we were just talking about Hold Your Fire. Hold Your Fire has some really great songs, whereas Snakes and Arrows has a collection of pretty decent songs, but I don't find anything here. There's no go-to song where I'm like, and I'm going to hear that song. I'm in the mood for this Rush song, this Rush album, this Rush period. They did pare it down a little bit. This is post keyboard Rush. I do like the aggressiveness of Malignant Narcissism. I think that's a great short instrumental track. I like that. I like the theme of the larger bowl. I like the acoustic guitar, and Geddy's vocals on this album are pretty decent. He's a little bit past his prime. 3 instrumentals. Okay, well, there's 13 songs, so I think then that's okay. Hope is a good one as far as the instrumentals go. But really, it's just not a go-to album as far as I'm concerned when it comes to Rush. And this is why. And so you take an album like Power Windows. That, even though that's not high up on my list, it has some really great classic Rush songs that I could go to and I can listen to it anytime when I'm in the mood for Rush. This album just doesn't pique my my thirst for Rush. So,
You know, I think one way that you have to look at these albums is you can't compare like 2112 to Power Windows. Those are like almost two different bands. Like you kind of have to look at Rush in sections. And so like one way to look at it is like they have a bunch of keyboard heavy albums. And a good way to look at it is if you're going to compare albums, you compare those keyboard albums. That's why I kind of had like Hold Your Fire a little bit lower down on my list, because compared to the other keyboard heavy albums, I thought it was a little bit weak. And, you know, I think you probably could compare like their last 3 albums. How do they compare to each other? But a good way to look at them, you know, in like the first 4 albums, 4 or 5, how do they compare to each other? Because they're more similar. It's easier to compare them. But I can't imagine. There's so many things that I like about Snakes and Arrows. Just one thing. I mean, there's this song "Larger Bowl," and so let me just say one thing. Like, I didn't listen to Rush for a long time, and then I went back and listened to these 3 albums, their last 3 albums, and I was just like so blown away with how great they are. And you know, maybe I'm overdoing it. You know, there are reasons that I have why I think those albums are really good, but I thought there were just so many things on Snakes and Arrows that were so good. And one of them is the song "Larger Bowl."
that's a good one. I do like that song.
I got to tell you, when I first heard that song, I started crying because I saw it as so personal from Neil Peart, like all the suffering that he went through with losing his child and his wife.
It's about being a human.
Yeah, it was just like so deeply personal, and so I don't know. I just thought that was like one of the most incredible songs lyrics I'd ever heard from him.
Yeah.
Wait a sec. I'm looking on. Okay, something about loneliness and the misfortunes of life. No such. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're just like how, you know, all these bad things had happened to him, and you know, and then he does this really amazing thing where he follows this like poetic form on that song. Like there's a very specific type of form of a poem for Larger Bowl that he follows, where he kind of like adjusts the lines, and it's a masterpiece. I mean, it's really, I was really impressed with that one.
Yeah, he went through a lot, so he has a very unique perspective.
Yeah.
Just talking about being a human being. Sean, you want to? We're going to go to your next one on your list, and that is "Fly By Night."
Okay, all right. So, "Fly By Night." You know, one of the things that hits you as a listener is Geddy's like confidence in his vocal prowess on this album. That's what kind of hit me when I was listening to this the other day. Anthem is a great, powerful opener. You hear the complexity that they're developing here on that particular song. They're switching between 7/8 and 2/4. I googled that, and I found that out that they're switching between those 2 time signatures. They didn't do anything like that on the first album, and that's probably thanks to Neil Peart's arrival that they started doing that.
Yeah.
This is definitely their first progressive rock album. The mix is great on this album. If you listen to Terry Brown's mix, the original mix, the drums sound so good, and just everything just blends together so well. I love Geddy Lee's bass sound here. Alex's soloing is really enjoyable on this album, the use of the wah pedal. And he does a great solo in the 8-minute epic song "By Tour and Snow Dog," where we get some really phenomenal drumming and tasteful drums by Neil Peart. In spite of the great By Tour and Snow Dog, By Tour and Snow Dog, let me tell you, on the other hand, Rivendell is a total snooze fest. Sorry, folks. This thing, I mean, you can't even classify this as a song. I classify this as a non-song. Okay, just try to listen. You want to go to sleep at night? Listen to Rivendell. I have no idea how this song even ended up on that. This is another one, but you know, And there's not many of these in the Rush catalog, but I got to point them out. It's like, what were they thinking with this song?
Maybe just a filler, or they like Tolkien or something.
It just has no pizzazz. So for me, this album has its moments. Doesn't quite measure up to the other Rush albums on a song per song basis. So that's my number 17.
The one thing I would add there, I don't know, like By Tours is such a great song. Like I had this one a little bit higher just because that one song is so awesome. And it also has Anthem and In the End and Fly
Love
By
In
Night.
the End. In the End is so underrated.
In the End is a great song. Okay. So yeah, it just has a lot of things. I had this. Well,
it's such an improvement from the first album too. It's such
a you know we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to find some sort of formula. Like when we finish this off in a couple months, we'll have to like put an average, like average the three, like give it whatever score you want. Like this could be the highest would be a 19, I guess. So again, that would be our best album would be a 19, and this would have a score of a 3. And you could average it all together, and we should make like a composite list. And that'd be interesting to see where these albums come out.
Yeah. All right. So Barry, we're gonna switch gears here. I gotta disagree with you wholeheartedly on your number 16 counterparts. So I'm gonna let you take it away. I'm gonna let you try and justify this.
Okay.
This horrible decision you made.
I think the
best Rush albums I've ever heard. At number 16.
I just didn't. So what I did is I went through and picked out great songs for each album, and the only song that I came back from this album as great was Alien Shore. And I went back and listened to that, and I'm like, yeah, that's a good one. There aren't any really great songs that I love on this. And then the other thing is, like, I don't think this compares well to their last three albums for me. It's the same kind of style where it's heavy, but it's just so much better. And there just aren't a lot of songs that I like on here.
So you're not a fan of Nobody's Hero or The Speed of Love. I think The Speed of Love, I think when the album came out, Neil was saying how they had never really done like a mid-tempo rock song before. And I think that song really works. It's really the highlight of the album for me. It's a go-to song by Rush.
I do like that one.
Yeah, I love that one. I think Cold Fire is excellent. Even Everyday Glory has a nice melodic guitar lead. I think some of the lyrics are great. I think the instrumental is a great instrumental. Leave That Thing Alone.
Yeah.
Love crunchy guitars by on Stick It Out and Animate. Just it's higher up on my list, but I understand everybody's got different perspectives.
Leave that thing alone. That's a really good live song too.
Yeah, they do that
live. So, Double Agent, that's actually pretty good too. Yeah, maybe I should bump that one up. I don't know.
All right. So Sean, we're gonna go to your number 16, which is Power Windows. So take it away there, buddy.
Yeah, so I gotta admit this one, I've been in the routine of just going to the first one or two songs, 3 or 4 songs maybe, and then skipping and all the way to Mystic Rhythms. But lately I've been listening more to there's 3 songs that are kind of the deep cuts. So I'll go through those. Territories is a really fun song. One of those underrated gems in the Rush catalog. It's got a really cool bass line and some signature trebly kind of riffs from Alex. Yeah. Middletown Dreams. I love the soulful melodic singing by Geddy Lee. Great bass playing on that one too. This is not a heavy album, but it's interesting, and I find the keyboard parts really enjoyable on the song because they're trying some different things. Emotion Detector is another melodic number. I don't hear very much dynamic range on this when I listen to it on my headphones here, but it definitely has that 1985 vibe. If that's what you're into as a listener. Nice guitar solo on Emotion Detector, but I think Neil doesn't really shine too much on this album, and maybe he's a little bit too low in the mix. Definitely an ambitious record here. And what I would say is these lists are not static. And if I were to do another list like this in 2 or 3 years, I could definitely see this Power Windows moving up. But
Yeah,
for now, Power Windows is my 16.
I agree with you on some of your points. I think the keyboards, and like Barry was trying to say, you can't really judge it based on the period, because this is a band that was around for 4 or 5 decades, and every decade it sounds a little bit different, and that's just the nature of music, how things change. But I think Mystic Rhythms is one of Neil's one of the highlights of Neil's career as far as drums go. It's a very basic rhythm, but it's very tasteful. It's very thoughtful. He does some things at the end of the Big Money. He does kind of Neil. I'm speaking of Neil again. He does some snare drum rolls at the end of the Big Money, which are very unique.
Oh yeah.
If you look up the transcription, he's actually doing sets of 5s and then 6, and so that's just a something to think about. I do love Middletown Dreams when Geddy comes in with the keyboards kind of out of place, where he kind of comes in between two verses with a keyboard lead. I think that's really interesting. I think that actually originated with not Rupert Hine. I forget the producer on this album.
It's Peter Collins.
What is it?
It's Peter Collins.
Peter Collins. It was his idea to kind of come in with just a shot of one instrument in kind of a weird spot, and he does that in Middletown Dreams, which I really think works really well. And Geddy Lee thinks this is one of their best albums. He thought it was.
Yeah, I was so surprised to read that when he said that.
Yeah,
he liked this a lot better than Presto and
Bones. Yeah. Right. I have this quite a bit higher because, well, first of all, this is an album I saw live, I think, a few times on tour, and Mystic Rhythms was so great. And there aren't a lot of, I don't think there's any bad songs on the album. It's completely tons of keyboards, but like the mixing and the production is so awesome on this album.
It's overwhelming. The production, just the feel of the album, in your face, bright production is incredible. All the instruments sound great. This is unfortunately this is that era, and we keep coming back to this, but this is that era where Alex this is probably one of the few albums where he kind of disappears. You don't hear much from him. The keyboards and the bass and the drums are there. I mean, you literally have 5 instruments competing for the highest in the mix. You have vocals, bass, keys, drums, and guitar. And Alex kind of on these 2 albums, speaking of Power Windows and Hold Your Fire, he was a little bit lower in the mix, and he was a little bit frustrated. I don't know if you remember this in the book, Sean, but Alex was almost afraid to speak up because Geddy was so headstrong when it came to writing and recording and being a little bit of a bossy. Admittedly a bossy person in the studio, and he kind of took over for these 2 albums. And he was kind of the main force behind writing the album. But so we'll go to we'll stop our conversation on Power Windows. And unfortunately, I'm going to disappoint you guys again. I'm going to go to my number 16 album, and that is the Clockwork Angels, which is their last.
All right, let's end this call. let's end this call.
Now you can hang up on the call now.
But you're gonna have to explain it because I can't.
So here's the thing. I mean, this is kind of like it. I have this higher than I had Snakes and Arrows, but Clockwork Angels, there's nothing on this album where, like, I know we just talked about Power Windows and Hold Your Fire. There are just some great go-to songs on those 2 albums. With Clockwork Angels, I can say that it does have, in my opinion, and this is why it wasn't lower, it has one of the best Rush songs they ever did, and that is The Garden, with the orchestration, Geddy Lee's nice vocals, Neil Peart's subtle drum mix. I really do think that's one of their most beautiful and well done songs, well recorded songs that they've ever done. The Garden. Other than that, I just think some of the songs are a little bit. I think the album's a little bit of a disappointment. Some of it I like. I like the bass lead in The Anarchist. I do like the ballad, The Halo Effect. I think that works well. The Wreckers works as a very simple, tuneful song. But again, it's tough because there's so many great Rush albums. Something has to fall at the bottom of the list just by nature. It's like, who's the worst president, or who's the worst, whatever.
Yeah.
These are all, it's very hard. Sometimes it's hard to justify it, but I think as we get lower and lower or higher and higher on the list, you'll see how much more I enjoy some of the other albums.
I mean, like my rebuttal right off the top would be like I love the concept, and it just worked. Everything works together so well. The lyrics are I thought were just fantastic throughout the whole album. And it's it's definitely like a concept album where Neil is telling a story. I just thought it was so well done. And I think Headlong Flight might be my favorite Rush song. So I don't know. I'm disagreeing with you on this one.
What do you think, Sean?
I have this one way higher.
Oh, way higher. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm the center of the group on this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we hit our top four. I think we hit our bottom four for all three of us. So
We could probably do like next time we meet up. You guys want to do like 5? I could do at least 5 because here we are 45 minutes.
We'll do 3 more, and I'll stop the recording right now. So we'll kind of wave goodbye, and that'll be it for this session, and we'll see you next time on our next podcast. So I'm gonna stop the recording and see.